God declared that all of the things He spoke into existence were good. Then He made people, and He said, that's really good. Do you remember what is the first thing God said was not good? Genesis 2:18. It is not good for the man to be alone. Now, interesting thing about Hebrew, Adam can mean man, or it can mean us. So to solve the problem, to fix the problem, God created family, a wife for the husband, a husband for the wife, and by extension, relationships for us all. Relationships, my friends, are the spice of life, for they make life taste good. Marriage, family, parents and children, cousins, siblings, best friends are designed by God, intended by God to be these wonderful feasts that bring us together for times of happiness and satisfaction and support and all of those things. Relationships, they're the spice of life. But some folks don't do relationships well. I think some of you probably remember Ann Landers, who had an advice column in newspapers all across the Fruited Plain. People would write into Ann Landers and present their problem, and she would give her advice. One day, a woman wrote in about her husband of 43 years who smoked like a chimney and yet never ever had any cancer. She, on the other hand, who never smoked a day in her life, came down with lung cancer. Lung cancer so severe they had to remove one of her lungs. In spite of his wife's maladies or illnesses, husband kept smoking like a chimney. Then one day he read an article that cited some research claiming that dogs that live in a house with a chain smoker are 30% more likely to develop lung cancer. So he exclaimed, "My goodness! I got to give these things up. Why, if anything ever happened to Champ, his beagle, I'd never forgive myself." And just like that, he quit smoking. Some people are better with pets than with people. How can we learn to do relationships well? Some people seem wired to do it well, other people seem not. But we can learn to do them well, and we should, because relationships make life taste good. Now, there are lots of places we could go to look for suggestions on how to do relationships. My favorite place is Ephesians chapter 4. So with your Bible software, your Bible hardware, join me in Ephesians 4. If you've got the old school sword in your hands, Paul's letters, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians chapter 4. Paul, in this passage, and this, like I said, this is my favorite place to find relationship instruction. He listed 5 relationship rules that can redeem, I prefer maybe even revolutionize our relationships, which will lead to productive, happy living. Now, he's talking to the church. Relationships between Christians. But should that not apply to all relationships? So here we go. Rule number 1. Be honest. In your relationships, be honest. Look at verse 25. Therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Speak truth because we are members of one another. That song, Brother, really connected it. We are in relationships, obviously in the home, with our spouses, with our children, our grandchildren, what have you, but also with our best friends. We are connected. We are members of one another. And when he talks about membership, he's not talking about how somebody might be the member of a Rotary Club or how I'm a member of a dojo. He's talking about how my hand is a member of my body. We've kind of polluted or demeaned the concept of membership. You don't just join and then never go. He's talking about being connected. Honesty in the body is important, because if the body lies to itself, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. We have a leader in our association whose husband was a runner. And a couple summers ago, he was running and he developed an ache in his back. And his body said, nothing to worry about, it's just running plus old age. Any of us who are physically active know the older you get, the more aches and pains you develop. The old ship starts to creak a little bit. Well, 3 months later, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctor said that backache was probably your first symptom. A couple months after that, he died. Dishonesty hurts the body. In the same way, dishonesty wounds relationships. So rule number 1, be honest. Rule number 2, parent your anger. Parent your anger. Look at verse 26 and 27. Paul wrote, be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity. Why not? If you were in a home where you were told you shouldn't get angry, raise your hand. You were in a home, you were told you shouldn't get angry. So, are you and I the only ones, or the rest of them are too shy to admit it, I guess? But in our culture, you hear it all the time. You shouldn't get angry. Husbands say to wives, you shouldn't be angry about that. Paul actually says it's okay to get angry. Just don't let anger get you. We call that in Greek a permissive imperative. He's giving us permission to be angry, just don't let it control you. Well, what is anger? This was interesting. I learned this some years ago in one of many books. Anger is a secondary emotion that arises in response to pain, fear, or frustration, which are primary emotions. In other words, anger isn't the first thing we feel in a situation. No, it's pain, fear, or frustration. We also call anger the fight or flight emotion, right? And this is why it's dangerous to say you shouldn't be angry, because God gave us anger to either fight for our lives or to flee for our lives. Paul wants us to respond appropriately to anger. The problem is, some folks, when they get angry, always go on the offensive. They always attack. Other folks, when they get angry, run. They flee. Gary Smalley, who actually taught me this, the first insight about anger, in his book, Making Love Last Forever, had an angry and abusive father growing up. And so he made up his mind when he had kids, when he had a family, he was not going to behave like his dad did. So whenever his children did something that elicited an anger response in him, first thing he did was he stepped back, cooled off. He did not lash out. He did not go on the offensive. He didn't run either. He simply cooled off. Second, once he cooled off, then he examined what it was his kids had done to either scare him, hurt him, or frustrate him. And if they broke a rule, if they did something defiantly wrong, then he gave the necessary, fair punishment or correction. He did not go on the offensive immediately. Other people run from anger. I know you've seen this. It's been a little while since I've seen it, but a frustrated mom in a grocery store. You get back over here right now. Kids running around. You get back over here right now. I'm going to count to 3. And if you're not back over here, boy, the hammer's coming down. 1, 2. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2. And I'm standing there going, 3, lady, 3. Just take care of it. But she runs from anger. We need a proper response. When Gary Smalley's 3 college-age kids came home one summer, he gathered them together in his living room and asked them a question that I find very insightful but somewhat risky. He asked his college-age kids, What was it in mine and my wife's parenting that you would like to have in your parenting? What do we do as parents you want to do? And what do we do as parents that you don't want to do? His middle child, Greg, was a bit of a rounder, a bit of a free spirit. And Greg said, "Dad, you kind of had to punish me a lot, but you never punished me in anger. I want to be like that." Yeah. Be angry, but don't sin. A couple that's been married for over 30 years began to have trouble hearing each other. That comes with age, doesn't it? Apparently, having to repeat the statement over and over again was rather frustrating. And so anger began to bleed over onto their responses. Well, one day they kind of woke up and decided together, you know what? Let's quit getting angry when we're not heard. Let's just repeat what was said until it's heard. Makes sense, doesn't it? We're going to get angry because all of us experience pain, fear, or frustration. Somebody actually said, the only people who never get angry are people who don't care. If you don't care about something, you're not going to get angry about it. But when we care, when we're passionately involved in something, then anger is possible. We all get angry. Let's not let anger get us. I love Proverbs 16:32 that says, "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit is better than he who conquers a city." When we get angry, let's rule our spirit. Be honest. Parent your anger. Third rule, work hard to meet needs. Work hard to meet needs. Look at verse 28. "He who steals must steal no longer, but rather he must labor, performing with his own hands what is good, so that he will have something to share with one who has need." Now, this principle can be applied to so many relationships. I mean, one of the reasons we work hard in a career to earn a living is so that we can have enough left over to help others less fortunate than we are. But think about this in our relationships. Should we not work hard to give? Have you ever been in a relationship where it was all one-sided? The person was always taking and never giving? Paul says, let he who steals stop it and work hard to have something to share to meet that person's need. Family, friendships. Remember the old expression? A friend in need is a friend indeed. The Unicorn is a new sitcom on television. Arlene and I don't really care for sitcoms usually. I find the laugh tracks annoying when they think something's funny that I don't. But this show kind of got our attention for some reason. It's about three couples who are best of friends. Unfortunately, the wife of one of the couples died the year prior to the show's starting. And it's fun to watch these three couples as they are taking care of each other, helping each other, looking out for their kids, picking them up after school. Two of the dads actually coach a soccer team together. And of course the families have gathered around the father who has two daughters he's trying to raise by himself. So they're always trying to encourage him. Well, in a recent episode, the widowed dad, who's actually out on a date with someone that really kind of interested him, asked his two buddies if they wouldn't mind to take a walk by his house and just kind of peek in on his daughters. See, his daughters had asked permission to have some friends over, a couple of friends each. You know, and Dad said, well, I won't be home that late, so I think it'd be all right. The older girl was 15, I think. And so he trusted them, but they had stopped returning his call. So he was a little concerned. So the two guys actually dropped what they were doing and went for a walk and kind of strolled by the house and peeked in. It was a good thing they did because things had kind of spiraled out of control there. Let me ask you, Do you know what your wife needs? Do you know what your husband needs? Do you know what your mom needs? Do you know what your daughter needs? Do you know what your best friend needs? In your relationships, do you work hard to find out what they need? And then will you drop everything to meet that need? I tell young couples in premarital and in marital counseling, if you don't know what your spouse needs in order to feel loved, you jolly well better find out. Because meeting needs is what makes relationships work. I love Proverbs 3:27 and 28. Solomon wrote, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, 'Go and return, and tomorrow I will give it,' when you have it with you." Be honest. Parent your anger. Work hard to meet needs. Fourth, speak encouraging words. Avoid discouraging words. Speak encouraging words. Avoid discouraging words. Verse 29. "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment." There's that word "need" again. "So that it will give grace," that is the power of God to do what you got to do, "to those who hear." I love the word edification. In the original language, it's from a word that meant to build a house. It means to build up. Our words can either build up or they can tear down. We used to say when I was a kid, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words cannot hurt me." And that is a lie straight from hell. Words can be devastating. "You're always late. You never listen to me. You forgot to take the trash out again? This place is a pig pen. Why don't you clean it up?" Since it's so easy to be negative and critical and even demeaning in relationships, most marriage counselors and family counselors, counselors in general, advocate becoming experts on encouraging words. John Gottman of the University of Washington has spent decades doing major research into marriage relationships, what leads to divorce, how do you turn a couple on the way to divorce, away from divorce. He's kind of the secular relationship guru. He says it takes 5 encouraging statements to undo the damage done by 1 negative statement. So we need to develop, he says, the habit of affirmation. It's so easy to be critical, to be hurtful, that we have to double down. 5 for just 1 mistake, 1 careless word. How do you do that? Well, counselors actually suggest, especially in marriage, that if you have a problem, you struggle in this area, sit down and write down the things about your spouse or your kids or your parents that you really admire, that you really respect. Pray about it, study it, and then look for opportunities to comment on them. Very proud of my daughter. She and Brandon have been serving in this big church in Lansing, Michigan. They've been so involved. Well, the minister of music invited Catherine to direct their spring musical, and it's a big production. They have an unlimited set budget. There are going to be 30 or 40 people in the show, including the choir and the actors. They're doing a dramatization of Pilgrim's Progress. Well, one Wednesday night, Catherine was talking with the minister of music and her assistant director when one of the actors walked by and just came over and interrupted and said, "Catherine, where did you learn to be such an encouraging person? How did you learn to be so encouraging?" We can and we must develop the habit of encouraging, of affirming, of building people up. 5 rules. 1, be honest. 2, parent your anger. 3, work hard to meet needs. 4, speak encouraging words. And finally, 5th, avoid hurtfulness by practicing forgiveness. You probably know police officers dread making domestic calls. Husband and wife, or two people living together, start arguing and screaming and breaking things, and so the neighbors call the cops. And the cops hate making those calls because they know that out of control anger can very quickly be turned at them. And out of control anger is dangerous. It is hurtful. It harms people. And that's true in relationships, even when the cops are not called. Out of control anger is devastatingly harmful and hurtful because we say and do things that destroys the relationships. One of the things Gary Smalley said years ago, the biggest secret to a happy home is to keep the anger levels low. Keep the anger levels low. And Paul basically says that, starting at verse 30, do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. In other words, the Holy Spirit's living in you. Don't break His heart by what you do. And then he gets specific. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice, the desire to get even, to hurt, to wound. Kind to one another, tender-hearted. Jettison all that stuff that comes roaring out of the furnace of an angry heart. Be kind, be tender-hearted. The question then becomes, how? Now you can't see it in English, but what follows is a participle that can, among many ways it's interpreted, answer the question, how? It could be translated, by forgiving each other, just as God in Christ has also forgiven you. How do we keep anger levels low? By practicing forgiveness. By forgiving each other. In other words, let the person off the hook. No longer hold it against her. And here's why this works so well. Unforgiveness leads to grudges. Leads to holding on to hurts, which produces bitterness. Now, holding on to past hurts. I know that's awkward, but yeah, holding on to hurts. And pain produces anger. You show me somebody who has a temper problem, and odds are really good that man or that woman is still holding on to something that was done to him or her 30 years ago. He never forgave her. She never forgave him. Here's one for you. Children of divorce usually get divorced. Not always, but the vast majority of them do. Here's why. When the divorce happens, there is anger in the child. Child may be angry at the parents. Child may be angry at herself. And that anger, unresolved, freezes the child at that developmental stage. Never learns to get beyond it. And that grudge simmers below the surface so much so that he or she may not even be aware of it. Conflict can be like a campfire. In some homes, in some relationships, it's like the wood is dry after a long summer drought. And there's plenty of kindling nearby, so the least little spark, and you got a bonfire on your hands. And in those homes, there are lots of bonfires. But then you look at another home or another relationship, another friendship, and it seems like the wood's wet. Like it's a drizzly day, and everything is damp and there's no kindling, and you just can't get the fire going. What's the difference? One relationship practices forgiveness. It's a reflex. The other relationship There are grudges. 5 rules for relationships. They'll redeem them. They'll revolutionize them. Happily married couple had some dear friends whose marriage was crumbling. And so they said, you should call the pastor who did our wedding, for he also did our premarital counseling. And I highly recommend that. You know, it drives me crazy. Young couples will spend, on average now, what is it, $20,000 on average for a wedding, for a 30-minute ceremony and dinner afterwards, and won't spend a dime on getting premarital counseling? That's ridiculous. Talk about getting the cart before the horse. Well, this couple got premarital counseling, and they said, hey, the principles that dude gave us, they work, and we use them in conflict situations. But then the husband said to the husband of that marriage in distress, he said, the principles work, but dude, it's all in the execution. It's all in the execution. That's true. It's good to know these principles. It's good, as I have, to have Ephesians 4 marked up with notes and scribbles in the thing. But we have to do them. We have to put them into practice, which begs the question, printed in your sermon notes, how do we overcome our natural tendency to do it wrong? That's our natural tendency. How do we overcome that in order to do it right? 2 words. Practice and prayer. Let me just tell you something. I don't care at what point you are in your friendship, what point you are in your marriage, in your relationships. If you've developed some bad habits in relationships that are ruining your relationships, you're not going to change overnight. And one of the problems, I've been doing some marriage counseling this last year. One of the problems for the couples is they want an instant change. Well, you spend a lifetime getting to that point and developing those bad habits. It doesn't change overnight. It takes practice. And you're going to fail. So you pray. I love Romans 12:2. Sums it up. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may be able to prove what the will of God is, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. In relationships, don't do your relationships the way the world does them. Don't do your relationships the way you learn to do them in the world. Let your mind be changed by practicing and praying over these principles. And as you work on them and practice and ask forgiveness and do it again and ask God to change your mind, He will change your mind, which will revolutionize your relationships. And then you will be able to prove that God's ways of doing relationships work best. And folks, that's what I call productive living. Lord, so many marriages are in disarray, families broken, holidays become a nightmare. Somebody said, I'll be home for the holidays and in therapy by January. That's so true in so many places. Friendships that are on the rocks, friendships, relationships that are unhealthy. You've shown us how to do it. Help us to choose to do it. Help us to be willing to practice these principles and to pray for the power to accomplish these principles, whether we're 16 or 76. It's never too late or too soon to start doing our relationships right. So help us, God. Help us. In Jesus' name, amen. We talked a lot about love. Love makes the world go round. Have a Coke and smile. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. I'd like to teach the world to sing. Okay, we do so much with love. But you know what love really is? It's meeting needs. One of my favorite definitions for how to know if you're in love with someone so that you can marry that person, it is when you need to meet that person's needs. True in friendships, true parents and kids, kids and parents. When I love someone, I need to meet that person's needs. Paul tells us how to do it. And when we do it, Jesus said the world will know we are His because we love one another. Let's stand together and sing this song. Learned it when I was a teenager.